Hey guys, Matt from Soundrolling.com here, still shooting in lovely Marrakesh. So wanted to do this as a sound Q&A if you haven't been on one of these before. The whole idea is that I want to provide more content but also more context, and so answering individual questions on a very specific scenario basis I think adds a lot more value hopefully to the community in general. And again, these are all just my thoughts. There's a completely different way of doing it, so think of it more as a conversation rather than an absolute kind of definitive thing. Although, of course, some things are pretty much set in stone, like what decibels stand for and all that kind of jazz. So yeah, let's start with I had a question on the last one that I didn't get around to, which is, would I put a high pass filter on the NTG2 in production or in post? And now this applies to kind of any shotgun. Generally, I'm pretty much always running an 80 hertz bass cut on my shotguns. Maybe unless I'm doing kind of sound effects, this is kind of more specifically geared towards dialogue. So dialogue 80 hertz, I find rolls off quite nicely, because once you have the Atmos fill in and things like that, and you can also reduce the level slightly that you need to operate at if you kind of cut that as well. So 80 hertz seems to be my my pretty much go-to choice. Maybe higher, maybe less. And again, even if you have like on the sound devices, a kind of rolling one that you can hear live and you can do a test, you can always make a note for the editor or sound editor at the end and see what they think. So you have the choice. Again, I wouldn't go too high, even if you think you'll need to in post. I would let that kind of stay. But for me, yeah, about 80 hertz seems pretty good. So is it possible to change the dB octave on the pre-fade, on the high-pass filter on the 664? I don't think so. I think it's just pretty much, yeah, I wonder how much it does. I think it's set. I don't think there's any other options on any of the 6 series to change how fast it goes. Yes, I am back, Jared. Thought a bit of a nice background with the pool vibes, and yeah, better internet connection. That's the most important thing downstairs. So a lot better than the hotel room. Although still coming in and out with this kind of very bad connection thing as well. So any other questions? I think the dB to octave is definitely set in terms of the high pass filter. So if you do need to kind of do anything in post production, you can again just let them know. And if you know post production, then that's a very useful thing to do. Yeah, or if you're not sure, just kind of leave it as is. So yeah, so I'm here for you guys for, like, I don't know, let's do like 15 minutes, half an hour. Try not to make these too crazy, and you can just ask me about anything. Still shooting. We're in the final week now of the 6-week feature film. Lots of covert filming today. I don't know if anyone saw my Instagram at Soundrolling, but there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of basically pros and cons to kind of shooting documentary style, I guess. So let's see. We're getting loads of stuff now. So Zach, if you're getting a bunch of hits on lavs, what's your process for troubleshooting? Hits, generally, if I have lots of radios running, I use Freak Finder to try and stop them intermodulating, which is where if they're kind of too close together, then they all start, the frequencies overlap in a really weird way and start causing kind of dropouts. The next thing I would do is I would actually make sure that the aerial is not touching the skin. You can do that with a little rubber mount. I've done a video on that before, of like why you're losing frequency range, and that's because the body, if you put an antenna on the body, the actual water that you're made of, water absorbs a hell of a lot of RF. That's like wireless frequency, and so that'll cut your range, but also it may cause kind of crackles and pops. The next thing to do is just check that the microphone, I guess, doesn't have too much like humidity on it. If you've kind of found that you've gone from a very cold environment to the inside, you might need to let them acclimatize before you kind of plug them in. Otherwise, it would just be your positioning, probably. So your positioning would mean that maybe you're getting kind of specific cracks or rustles off a certain piece of clothing. So that's my kind of rough ideas. Again, it's very hard because everything's so situational, but those kind of things firstly come to mind for trying to solve hits. And yeah, changing the frequency to higher or lower is always good, especially if you have wideband. Our rack mount recorder's good. I need to record voiceovers for my dock. I think Class A. I'm not really sure on the actual kind of classes of preamps, but I guess the very best ones are just the quietest. There's obviously varying other factors in that, but for instance, I use my sound devices and things like that for voiceover recording. Any kind of preamp and microphone, if you have the right setup, is fine. You can even use an interface straight into Pro Tools. There's millions of different things, so just try and look for the quietest kind of preamp, I guess, and one that accepts the kind of phantom power or whatever you need to power your microphone, and then you should be good to go. But as opposed for rack mounting, I haven't used any rack mount recorders before, so I don't really have that much experience on that. Still looking for the solution on placing HF mics on Talent. HF mics? Is that like high frequency mics? Do you have something that you often do, some accessories that may help friction, I mean? So by HF, I guess you mean radio mics. There's no the solution. There's a couple of solutions for different types of clothing, and I've done a few videos on like placing it on the head or in between the layers of a shirt. You can actually stick it to the body as well. You can use things like the Magic Mic bra strap, as it's called, and that'll actually hide in between but kind of keep it central. It's usually just under the chest, obviously, because then there's a bit of space hopefully in between. But yeah, you'll have to be more specific for the solution, because the thing is that it varies so much every time. You can hide them in ties, you can hide them in shirts, you can hide them in suits, you can hide them in helmets, you can hide them in hair, you can hide them, so yeah, the list goes on. So maybe give me a more specific example. Friction just means that maybe you're getting cable mic rubbing, in which case do a little loop and it will fold over itself to make like a little circle, kind of like if you're going down a car park, if that kind of makes sense. You know, you go down another level, and then put a little bit of tape on it, and that should stop some of the cable mic actually rubbing. Did an hour and a half or so live webinar with Simon Baishi, yeah, who I'm forgetting everyone's name. And we went through how to hide mics and where to hide them, so look up that webinar of hiding radio mics, and it should be on there. Okay, so Jared, so at what point do you know it's time to upgrade to SD and leg roll on a cart's been through like 5 features with no issues? I think if things are working for you, then it's fine. For me, the reason for upgrading, for instance, to sound devices is just because the recorder that I had wasn't anything like the F8. It was Edirol R4, so just having more inputs, having more features, like more routing outputs and things like that, was just making my workflow a lot easier. I probably changed your AVXs before I changed anything else, maybe because just of the... For me, the AVXs, they're going to be good kind of short range, but having more flexibility with antenna arrays and things like that, it's going to be better if you do basically upgrade, because I don't know the range on them, or even just how much they compress or how good the limiters are, but my reason for jumping up to Lectrosonics from G3s, one of the main reasons was range and limiters themselves, because that kind of Campander compression was getting a bit too much. Okay, Zach was using the F8 just the other day. I could hear the internal timecode clock. Wow, definitely worth upgrading to SD. in the Mo. I like their menus functions better too. Yeah, I love my SD, my sound devices. I was on the 664 before going up to the 688, and for me, it's kind of just got everything. There's quite a few different recorders. You should look at maybe the Sonosax. You should look at maybe even Zaxcom. Again, don't have much personal experience, but I know a few people that have used them and kind of swear by them. But the best thing to do is try and rent some out. But definitely compared to the F8 or the AVX, which ones would I upgrade first? I'd probably upgrade the AVXs first, just for a bit more control and a bit more kind of, for lack of a better word, quality. So Justin says, would you rather get the boom mic close to the frame and risk getting in shot, or keep further distance but sacrifice audio quality? Well, it all depends on the type of shot. If it's a fixed shot, you can even be in the frame. A video on that as well, called How to Paint Out Boom. So you can maybe show that to some of your clients. If you're getting, if you have the mic on a stand, and for instance, if this line was the safety, so like where my hair is right now, you can maybe dip it in so the mic's literally just here. And if the frame doesn't move, then you're never going to get in shot because both things are completely fixed. If it's kind of handheld, moving around quite a lot, then obviously maybe you want to err on the side of caution of being a little bit further away. But maybe you have radio mics on them and you mix them in slightly to give a more roomier feel. So there's a million ways of doing it, but obviously the best is just to get really good at booming, so you can get as close as possible at all times and be able to kind of judge, or at least rehearse, what's going to happen. Then you make your own judgment, kind of call by call. Sometimes I completely pull out because I'm just never sure where they're going to look. Sometimes I'm able to see the frame, and so I'm constantly adjusting all the time as the shot goes. I'm like, yeah, I'm always out. You see, you can't see my hand wherever it is. So that's kind of a rough thing. But yeah, close is always better. So try that. That sounds like a malfunction. Yeah, if you can hear the time code, that does sound like a bit of a malfunction. The new devices mixer upgrade to SD, but I need to mix a lot from a cart, and having an interface, large faders is the key to my work. So the 664 SLK is 5 to 8K. Yeah, that's very true. And I would even probably, you may as well jump straight to the 688 and get the control service, because then you get slightly more routing options and kind of better stuff like that as well. Compared to the 664, you also get the rack mounting SL6 that you can control from within the 664, your radios and frequencies, and there's a nice tenor antenna distribution and powering distribution in the SL6 as well, which is why I really like the SL6, and I don't believe it can be put on the 664, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, kind of rattled through all those questions, didn't I? So let's see. I don't know. There's no questions yet, but it's been about 15 minutes, so unless anything dramatic happens, I think that's a pretty good way to kind of end it. And then I'll try and get these videos kind of transcribed and put on the blog as well, so they're easier to find in terms of questions and answers. Not sure if you use the SD. I'm not a huge fan of it either, to be honest. It's got some small quirks to it, even though the 633 is less functionality. Well, ironically enough, the 633 actually has slightly more functionality than the 664 because it came out after. So things like the auto mix functionality, even having what else does it have? I think you can use the Wingman app with it as well. But yeah, there's actually a few more functions that are in the 633 than the 664. Again, the 664 has more inputs, but that's pretty much its only thing, I think, that's kind of taking over. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily buy a 664. I would maybe look, or maybe hedge your bets and kind of wait a bit. There's always this talk of this new 7 series kind of recorder first kind of hype talk, or whatever it is. So maybe wait for the 7 series and see if they actually kind of do anything to one up the 788 which obviously loads of people still use for recording. Or even look at Zaxcom, look at a Diva or something. Justin, how good are the Lectrosonics limiters? I love them. They are really good. Again, you can obviously completely smash them if you haven't set. You've got to set your gain settings right, but you can do a pretty dynamic scene and not be crushing too much on them. So whereas the G3 would pretty much just spit out the whole time. So yeah, I really love them. It's one of the main reasons I jumped up at that point. So Gregory Smith, can you think of a reason to compress your audio while recording for a feature film? I had a teacher who made her last film in 2008 and her technical comments are wonder for me part-times. I don't really understand the last part of the question, but is there a reason to compress for a feature film? I don't think so. Unless you're talking about limiters, in which case your audio will be slightly compressed. Yeah. Nicholas, hey Matt, nice videos. How do you make signals that have been hitting the limiter of the transmitters, Lectrosonics transmitters, sound natural again? Probably a bit of EQ. Again, it depends how hard you smash into it. If you're smashing into it to oblivion, it's pretty hard. But basically, you need to you can always, if it's kind of slightly clipped, you can use a declipper, the isotope system. It's all about how the whole scene flows. I think if you just need in your mix to have it mixed quite high, because obviously if it's shouting, it should only be going into the limiters properly if people are properly kind of shouting, in which case you kind of lose background noise, but then in the final mix it's fine. So it's a bit more of EQ, a bit more of maybe Maxim, maybe as a plugin that I've used before. I'm not a complete kind of know-it-all or a connoisseur of dialogue cleanup plugins, but isotopes, EQ, and maybe not compression but expansion, or maybe C4. There's kind of a few plugins out there from Waves. So making them sound natural. If they're a bit too crushed, I'm not sure how you would open that up too much. But generally it's all in actually just mixing it a bit higher in the levels. So again, sorry, it's a bit hard without an exact example, but maybe that's something that I can do in the future, just showing about gain settings, maybe a gain setting that's too high, a gain setting that's too low, and what that means for you in post-production. So thank you for the kind of suggestion from that. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, so I think I'm going to call it a day here. But thank you very much. You can always like this video, and then more people can see it. I'll try and get it transcribed and put in the description, so you can skip to the right points. And otherwise I need to get back to start cutting more of the sound chat talks, and I'll be releasing those kind of one a day again. So I'll kind of set up a load of them tonight. So till next time, beautiful people, have a good one, subscribe, all that good stuff. Still trying to do daily videos for at least the next kind of 5 years of my life, so we'll kind of see how that documenting process goes. And always you can get in touch with me on Instagram, Facebook, the usual places. At Soundrolling is the general tag to kind of look for, and of course check out the blog as well. There's a few different things I've been doing on there in terms of just written, such as redefining the cover letter, and also why knowledge is being devalued compared to experience and attitude. So if you're interested in getting more work and that kind of thing, then maybe those two latest ones are a good bet for you as well. But until next time, see you later. If I can turn this off. This is like the really awkward goodbye. Oh no, so awkward. No, I'm joking. Alright, see you later.